So the people of Israel are at Mount Sinai. They have pledged to God, we will do everything that you tell us to do. Well, what does God want his people to do? What are his commandments that he wants them to follow? God tells them, I'm going to come down and I'm going to meet with you. Get ready to meet with me at the mountain. Exodus chapter 19, you look at verse 16. It says, on the morning of the third day, there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast, so that all the people in the camp trembled. And then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God at the foot of the mountain. And can you imagine it? The thunder, the lightning, the cloud on the mountain, the trumpet blasting, and Moses says it's time. Come out to meet with God. Verse 18. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke was going up. The whole mountain is trembling. The sound of the trumpet is getting louder and louder. Moses speaks, and then God answers in thunder. How would you feel if you're the people encountering God? You've just been grumbling over these last days, and now you are at the mountain ready to meet and hear God. The Lord tells Moses, I want you to go down and I want you to warn the people not to try to get too close or I'll kill them. Make sure they don't touch the mountain. Make sure they don't draw near or I'll take their lives. Moses warns the people. You can imagine they probably don't need the warning. They don't want to be anywhere close. You could probably think of it. But Exodus 20, God is going to speak directly to his people. Exodus 20, verse 2. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. See, all of the words of God, the commandments of God are founded in this. God says, I'm your God who saved you. You belong to me. And so I can tell you how to live as my people. Well, how does God want his people to live? He gives 10 words, 10 sayings, 10 commandments about how he wants them to live in such a way that they will let his light shine to the nations. Exodus 20 verse 3, you shall have no other gods before me. God demands the absolute first place in his people's hearts. Verse 4, you shall not make it for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything in heaven above, earth beneath, or the water under the earth, and you shall not bow down to them or serve them. Why? For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. God wants his people's absolute devotion, undivided devotion, wholehearted allegiance. God allows no competitors. He wants all that we are, all of the time. That's what he's saying to his people. Verse 7, Commandment 3, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Don't throw my name around. Don't treat it as if it means nothing, and certainly don't use it or swear by it and then not keep what you say. Verse 8, Commandment 4, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you'll labor and do your work, but on the seventh day it's a Sabbath to the Lord your God. Like God had done on the seventh day of creation where he had rested, he gives the Sabbath to Israel as a gift of rest for them every week to remind them of the need to rest and the rest that they could have in knowing the Lord. The fifth commandment, verse 12, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land. That's the first commandment with a promise. Verse 13, commandment 6, you shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And the 10th, you shall not covet what belongs to your neighbor. Whether it's your neighbor's wife or your neighbor's servants or your neighbor's house, don't covet any of those things. Now, how do the people feel when they hear the voice of God? Verse 18 of chapter 20, when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled, and they stood far off, and they said to Moses, "You speak to us, Moses, and we'll listen. But don't let God speak to us, lest we die." Do you see it? In the presence of God, hearing the voice of God, they realize that if this keeps happening, they're all going to be dead. They cannot stand in the presence of a holy God. They need somebody. Their thought right now is, Moses, you go between us and the Lord. You talk to the Lord. You talk to us. We'll listen to you, but don't let God talk to us like that anymore, or we're all going to be dead. They realize the need that they have for a mediator, somebody to go between them and God. Now, God's will for the whole nation is that there'll be a kingdom of priests that would bring the nations to God, right? But the nation of Israel themselves are realizing, Moses, we need somebody to go between us and God. You go and talk with him and meet with him, and you tell us what he says, but we can't have this experience again or we're going to die. Moses then gives many commandments throughout the next several chapters, and if you read them carefully, what he's doing is he is explaining and applying in incredibly wise ways the 10 commandments, which are like the foundation of God's will for his people. And Moses is then explaining and applying to the people what it looks like to not steal, or to not commit adultery, to not murder. There's all kinds of applications of these laws throughout the next several chapters. And then you come to Exodus chapter 24. Moses reports all the words of the Lord to the people. Exodus 24, verse 3. Again, the people say with one voice, "All the words that Yahweh has spoken, we will do." Then Moses starts to offer sacrifices, and he takes some of the blood and he puts it on the altar of sacrifice. And you know what he does with the other parts of the blood? He starts throwing the blood on the people, tossing it on the people and saying, "This is the blood of the covenant. Your commitment to God has been sealed in blood." And you just think about that. That seems a lot different than the covenant that God made with Abram, when God seemed to bring all of the obligations on himself. The covenant he's making here with this generation through Moses, they're saying, "We will do everything that you say." And the blood of the covenant is tossed on them. It has been sealed in blood. They are bound to everything that they have committed to the Lord. They must obey, and will they? But yet they also realize that they need desperately somebody to go between them and God, because they know they are not what they need to be. And so then Moses goes up on the mountain to meet with God and to get more instructions. And God starts to talk with Moses about how God wants a tent. He wants to dwell in the camp. He wants to be with the people, with his people. But in order for God to dwell in the presence of his people, there's going to need to be sacrifices, blood shed for the people's sins. And there's going to need to be people to bring the nation to God. Remember, they had said, "Oh, Moses, we need you to go between us." And Moses was a mediator between the people and God. But now God begins to tell Moses, "I want there to be a specific group of the people who go between the people and me. I want there to be priests. And I want there to be a high priest. One person, one man in particular. Your brother, Aaron, will be the first, who will be so holy that that man will be able to represent the people before me and bring my words to the people, who will offer sacrifices for the people to me, so that I'm able to dwell among this people." It'll be Aaron will be the first. Think of this. Moses is up on the mountain. God is giving the people the mediator that they need, the holy man who can go between God and the people. And he's saying it's going to be Aaron, and he's giving Moses all these instructions about Aaron's clothing and the kinds of things that Aaron is supposed to do. And what do you suppose Aaron is doing down at the bottom of the mountain? Moses has been gone for about 40 days on the mountain, and Aaron's the leader of the people down at the bottom of the mountain. What do you think the holy high priest of God is doing with the people at the foot of the mountain?